Hello viewers and welcome back to the Dukascopy TV studio. I'm Ben Jones. Fresh off the Fed's decision to taper their bond purchasing programme, we have Frank Hollenbeck in the studio with us to discuss this. Frank, thank you very much for coming in today. Now, if we can go straight in and talk about the fact that the tapering isn't necessarily as substantial as some people thought. $10 billion will be the reduction down to $75 billion per month. Now, back in September, you said that people should focus their attention on equities until the Fed tapered. Now that they have, do you stand by this? What are your thoughts now?
Well, yes, I still think for the moment, equities are still the best among bad choices, okay? But I do think it's time to take some of the chips off the table. We do know that when taper begins, we can expect a pretty serious adjustment in the stock market, whether that be 1920, 1937, or even more recently what happened in Japan. For example, it had quantitative easing between March of 2001 and March of 2006, okay? And it also attempted to taper, and the market rejoiced for about 2 weeks, okay? And then it collapsed 24% in the next 2 months, okay? And this collapse continued for several years, as we can see from this particular graph. Another example is what happened in 1929. As we can see here, when the tapering finally did occur, we saw a pretty serious adjustment in the stock market. So again, equities is still the best choice, but I wouldn't be levered at the moment, and I would probably be taking some of my chips off the table.
Okay, now obviously it's been reduced by $10 billion, and as I said, it's not as much as some people were predicting. The Fed have said that they're going to try and completely eradicate tapering altogether within a year, perhaps. Do you think this is the right decision, and do you think it's viable?
Well, let's just say that the Fed seems to change its mind as often as it changes its underwear. I wouldn't be surprised that if we have a serious adjustment in the stock market, that the Fed will go back to printing 85 billion or even more. But we have to realize is that the quantitative easing is just creating an enormous amount of malinvestments, and it's causing an enormous amount of distortion in relative prices. So the longer it continues the quantitative easing, the longer will be the adjustment. Like I said in previous interviews, I'd rather lose an arm now than losing an arm and 2 legs tomorrow, okay? But we are going to have a pretty serious adjustment in the future. It's just a question of when.
So a lot of the discussion has been around how the tapering will affect the American economy, but how will it affect Europe?
Well, in 2013, we saw that the Fed's quantitative easing had some spillover effects onto Europe, so that its tapering and with higher interest rates is going to have probably an impact not only on the U.S. economy but the rest of the world. And let's be honest, with current debt levels that we see in Europe, Europe can't afford another recession. Okay, and the problem is that we've had recessions every 5 to 7 years, so it's really not unlikely that we'd have another one relatively soon.
And finally, very briefly, do you think this was the right time to begin tapering?
Well, I don't think that the U.S. government should have been doing quantitative easing in the first place. They shouldn't have been buying up 85 billion of assets. Essentially, quantitative easing has been ineffective since 2009. It hasn't spurred investment or consumption spending. So the only thing the 85 billion did was increase the risk of inflation into the future. So in my view is that we should have never followed this type of monetary policy in the first place.
Okay, Frank, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And thank you, viewers, for watching. Make sure you stay tuned to Dukascopy TV for more updates and exclusive interviews. Goodbye.